Hello guys and welcome to my new video. I'm super excited to start doing these kind of healer comparison videos for Shadowlands, and this video is going to be looking at the best class changes. Best class changes in terms of Shadowlands, in terms of how I feel those changes might impact healer performance. Again, this is very early. This is not really a prediction video because you need to keep in mind, if you want to know what the best healer for Shadowlands is going to be, let's go to the wheel of classes and let's spin it. Oh guys, you can see it here. It's right. Oh, you don't know what's okay. This class is going to be the best for Shadowlands, guaranteed 100%. Everyone knows that the wheel never lies. If you want to play the best class, you will play this. The wheel never lies. But if you actually want some real kind of, facts about the classes and how classes might perform later on, you can check out this video instead. I wanted to showcase the wheel because predicting right now what the best class is going to be is kind of insane. You can look at historical data and things like that, but the fact is changes are still incoming, spells are still being changed. So a big disclaimer, things can and will change. So first of all, when I'm comparing classes based on their changes, I'm not looking at things like covenants. I'm not looking at legendaries because people are gonna have different covenants. People will start seeing different gameplay changes that are going to be impacted by your covenant choice, because your covenant is going to synergize with a legendary. That legendary is going to synergize with a soulbind, and soulbinds are going to synergize with conduits. So all of a sudden you can see that predicting what the best healer class is going to be, it's insanely hard during this expansion because there's so many moving wheels. First of all, let's look at the healers that change the most. And by far, if you look at the healer changes in Shadowlands, there is only like one healer that got, to some extent, a complete rework, and that is Holy Paladin. I think a lot of people have seen Holy Paladin videos. They might have seen my videos about Holy Paladin with Holy Power. So there is a whole new system. Again, it's not really new because it existed before, but generally speaking, besides Holy Power, you also get your auras back. Back in the day, you used to have these auras, you click on them. But if you look at them, you'll see that Devotion aura is still looking to be insanely strong. 3% damage reduction for every member within 40 yards. And it's probably going to secure a Paladin spot in the raid, because look at that, you also use your Aura Mastery, and that damage reduction goes up to 15% for 8 seconds. So you can see that Paladin, Holy Paladin, is still the damage reduction healer. Besides that, like I mentioned, Holy Power, Holy Power, Holy Power. The first time you're going to log in with your Holy Paladin Shadowlands, you'll notice that, hey, I can't cast my Light of Dawn, because you need 3 Holy Power. You can get a maximum of 5 Holy Power. Legendaries can kind of increase that a little bit, but generally speaking, you can get 5 Holy Power. Every spender is going to require 3 Holy Power. So you're looking at things like Light of Dawn, which is a AoE healing ability. You're looking at things like World of Glory, which is your single target healing ability, and extremely strong right now in beta. Light of Dawn is kind of underpowered if you don't get the 5 members in it. And then you also have a damage spender like Shield of Righteous, which is kind of weird because it's an AoE damaging ability but also gives you armor. And how do you generate this Holy Power? There's only 3 ways to generate it. So Crusader Strike, which also has mana attached to it right now, guys, okay? Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, and Hammer of Wrath, which again cannot be used on targets below 20%, but that can change based on Covenant ability like Ventier ability, but it has a 4-minute cooldown. So generally speaking, you have your generators and then you have your spenders. And all of a sudden, for a lot of people, this feels like a little bit clunky. And a lot of people are asking what happened to Glimmer. Glimmer is a talent right now, which is also a fraction of the strength that it has in life. But guys, you have to remember, Glimmer was doing 40, maybe even 50% of your healing. If you look into the beacon transfers, Paladins were able to do a ton of passive DPS and they had damage reduction cooldowns. Let's be completely honest. Blizzard is not going to let that happen again. So I'm not surprised to see Glimmer going down or being a lot weaker. Whether it's going to be a viable choice, we'll still have to see. There is quite a few builds right now that are available for Holy Paladin in terms of Holy Shock builds, because there's a Holy Shock legendary. There is Divine Toll, which is Kyrian Covenant ability that shoots out Holy Shocks. And then you have the legendary that, your Holy Shock supply absorbs. Again, that synergy has been nerfed as I'm making this video. So keep in mind, anything and everything can change. So there is a lot of things that have changed with Holy Paladin. There's a lot of new play styles that are appearing because of this Holy Power generation. A lot of people might say it's very clunky, but I feel with few additional changes and few generators, and maybe Seraphim becoming baseline, I don't know, I'll talk about it later on, but I feel it could be generally a fun playstyle. But keep in mind, I still feel because they do provide damage reduction, they're still gonna have a guaranteed spot in raids, but we'll have to see. Again, damage reduction healers were very strong in BFA. So now let's move on to the second most changed healer. And this is kind of hard to decide between a couple of the healers, but I'm gonna go with Holy Priest. Yes, a lot of people who played betas or are keeping up to date with the changes. Holy Priest didn't really get a lot of talent changes and things like that. Like, if you look at it, they really just got Circle of Healing baseline, which is okay, cool, more AoE healing. It fits into the whole role of Holy Priest being like essential raid healer type of deal. You also get Prayer of Mending instant cast, and oh my god, that is literally the best change ever. But that's about it if you really look at it in terms of talent changes. You also got a talent, you know, Circle of Healing used to be a talent, it's now baseline. So instead of that, you got a talent that if you use Circle of Healing, your Prayer of Healing is going to be reduced in cast time, which again, interesting. It adds to that AoE healing niche of Holy Priest. But if you look at the actual spells that Holy Priest received in terms of damage, so we're talking about healer damage, guys. If you don't like healer damage, you won't care about the Holy Priest changes. I'm being very, very honest. But if you do actually care about healer damage, look at Holy Priest. You got things like Shadow Wall Pain, Shadow Wall Death, Mind Seer, which again does not have an AoE cap attached to it yet. Mind Blast. You get all the blasts and pains attached to the Holy Priest. So now you can actually borrow a lot of the strengths of your Discipline Priest or even Shadow Priest to deal damage as a Holy Priest, which is very, very interesting. But I have to mention, even though you have all of these cool new damaging abilities, on top of the fact that you still have Smite, Holy Fire, you know, Holy World Chastise and things like that, so your DPS toolkit has doubled. But I have to mention, there is still, you know, the little voice in the back of my head is saying, you have to kind of make a choice of DPSing rather than healing. What if I just swap the Discipline Priest and DPS and heal at the same time? So I don't know how everything's going to be worked out here in terms of the balance, the HPS that they provide between Holy Priest and Discipline Priest to even out the niches, if you know what I mean. But I'm kind of excited about the changes for Holy Priest because you get a lot of new things. Again, power infusion. And now we go to the list of the remaining healers, and I'm going to place them all in one zone. Very little changes, or again, no real deep impact to gameplay outside of your, you know, legendaries and covenant changes, things like that, which this video is not covering. So just out of this order, I'm going to start with Resto Shaman. Now, a lot of people are going to say that Resto Shaman has gotten so many new abilities and things like that, and they did. They got a whole lot of new abilities. You have new keybinds or new action bars where you're going to place your Water Shield, your Mana Tide Totem, which is very, very cool, Flame Tongue Weapon, Frost Shock, Lightning Shield, Earth Shield. Earth Shield is baseline. So out of these changes, and again, Primal Strike, Resto Shaman is going to be a melee healer, guys. But beside these awesome changes, again, I'm being a little bit sarcastic. A lot of these abilities is what I call action bar fillers. You're going to be placing them and you're going to clicking them like, I don't know, every so often. They're not going to affect your gameplay that much beside Earth Shield. Earth Shield, I feel the baseline change is actually really, really interesting, and I'm really excited about that. And honestly, they do need, or Resto Shamans need single target healing boost because they also got a talent Surge of Earth, which is weird because it works with Earth Shield, but it gives you AoE healing, so it doesn't try to fix the issues that Resto Shamans had for a really long time. So it's kind of interesting to see this happening. But generally speaking, I don't think there's a lot of changes for Resto Shaman. I think the main changes for Resto Shaman are going to be coming from Covenants, Conduits, possibly Soulbinds and things like that. You have to mention that there has been a push for your slow, efficient heal. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of legendaries and Soulbinds and Conduit synergies where Healing Wave is going to be pushed. In the same way that I forgot to mention that Holy Paladin got Infusion of Light changes, and this is possibly one of the worst, or I don't know how you're going to view it. Infusion of Light for Holy Paladin is now going to reduce the cast time of Flash of Light and make your Holy Light stronger. So your Holy Light is going to be a really slow cast, but really efficient, and your Flashlight is going to be this giga fast heal that does very little healing. So you can see that overall Blizzard is trying to push these efficient heals, which again, discussion, leave comments below. How do you feel about this? All of a sudden in BFA, if you're playing a healer in BFA, you don't really use these efficient heals anymore. There's not even a choice there. You're basically just using your flashlight. You're basically just using, for example, things like flash heal. You don't have a lot of choice, or using healing surge. I think in Shadowlands, Blizzard is trying to make your efficient heals a question, or possibly a solution to certain situations. But because this video is mainly focusing about Mythic Plus and dungeons, and I should have mentioned that at the start, this is mainly about 5-man dungeons. I'll do a video about raids later on. You have to think about the fast play style that you see in Mythic Plus. How is this gonna work out for them when you're trying to get, like, you know, fast play style is really the king in Mythic Plus. We'll see. But this is Resto Shamans, and they really didn't receive a whole lot of changes in terms of gameplay at the baseline level, even though they got so many new abilities. Now we go back to, again, we keep going through the list of the healers that were not really changed all that much. We're gonna go to Mistweaver Monk. And Mistweaver Monk, honestly, arguably has received the least amount of changes, but I'm still gonna put him in this clump group of little changes, just because mainly you did get a couple abilities. You got Expel Harm, which can be interesting. It heals a person, it deals damage to a person. It's pretty, again, I don't know if it's going to really change your gameplay all that much. You got Touch of Death, which is a DPS ability. It's 3 minutes cooldown, so it's kind of long. You also had a big change with Wave the Crane. So all of a sudden, a lot of people were saying, look, what's happening with Wave the Crane for Mistweavers? Wave the Crane is making a comeback for Mistweaver Monk in form of a talent. So instead of Red Crane talent, you're now going to get Red Crane talent, but it's Wave the Crane. So it's a bit of a confusion. So Wave the Crane right now is going to have a 2-minute cooldown. It has no mana cost associated, and it's going to last 25 seconds instead of 15 seconds. So there's been a significant, I don't know how you want to call it, a buff if you look at it right now. Instead of 1 minute, it's going to be 2 minutes, so that's kind of cool, I guess. But you know, you couldn't really use your Wave the Crane every 1 minute in BFA anyways because of the mana cost. So maybe if they are removing the mana cost, they'll be using Wave the Crane more often. And that's very cool. It's all good and dandy. At the moment in beta, it's kind of broken and it's not really working. I'll be honest with you. Mistweaver Monk seems to be the least cared for healer because I found the most issues and bugs for Mistweaver. Like, very few things were actually finished from Mistweaver. So keep that in mind. But you look at this talent and you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. But you also have to look at Spinning Crane Kick. So Spinning Crane Kick is your DPS ability. And it's one of the main reasons why so many Mistweavers were in MDI, in Mythic Plus competitions, because you had your Spinning Crane Kick. You would spin to win. Wave the Crane would scale with the more mobs you have because Spinning Crane Kick did not have an AoE cap. In Shadowlands, it does. So all of a sudden, my assumption is that you probably won't see Mistweavers in MDI tournaments as much as you see them right now, because right now in BFA, Spinning Crane Kick has no cap. It scales with more members. The more members you can DPS, the more healing you do with Wave the Crane. And in Shadowlands, there is a cap. And besides that, you also get a baseline ability. This baseline ability, by the way, gets replaced by Wave the Crane if you choose it. But if you don't choose Wave the Crane, you get Invoke Yulon the Jade Serpent. This is a 3-minute cooldown, and this ability is basically Red Crane. So you can see a bit of laziness going on here. Wave the Crane replaced Red Crane as a talent, and Red Crane became a baseline ability with a 3-minute cooldown, and it's called Invoke Yulon the Jade Serpent. And this is your changes for Mistweaver Monk. Discipline Priest got some changes as well. Again, it's all part of this very little changes group, which most of the healers fall into, except for your Holy Paladin and probably Holy Priest. But Discipline Priest, again, not a whole lot of changes. Outside of getting few of those juicy, you know, Mind Blast, Shadow World Dead. Shadow World Dead is actually really interesting because he has a really nice legendary that works really nicely. So I do feel that Discipline Priest did get some nice legendaries, but we're not going to cover legendaries in here. If you look at the spells and things like that, the biggest change for Discipline Priest by far is the Shadow Covenant talent change. And honestly, it's very, very interesting. You use it and all of a sudden it increases the shadow damage you deal by 25% for 7 seconds. But during this period, you're unable to cast any holy spells. This was completely broken in the beta and you couldn't really test it because the part where it says you are unable to cast holy spells did not work. You were basically able to cast anything you wanted. So you didn't really feel the restrictions that Shadow Covenant would apply to a Discipline Priest. So that's why I wasn't completely sure how that's going to be affecting the Discipline Priest gameplay, but it feels really interesting. And on top of that, you also got some changes with things like Lenience. Lenience is removed and now Light's Caress is there, which is a weird talent that I don't think anyone's really super excited about. It's going to... Allies are healed for a certain amount when they gain the benefit of Power World Barrier. Again, Barrier is a long cooldown, and healed again for a certain amount if they're under your barrier when it expires. I don't like talents that affect abilities that are very long cooldown. We'll have to see with time. So Discipline Priest makes a comeback in the list of very few changed healers. So now let's finish off this group of little changes with Restoration Druid. And Resto Druid didn't get a whole lot. And again, if you look at the utility of Druids, every Druid is getting things like Cyclone, which could be very cheesable in things like Bolstering Weeks. We'll see how that's going to work out. And you also get Stampeding Roar. Resto Druids really needed that extra utility, but I do feel that Stampeding Roar could be really strong in raid situations, just basically from the testing that they did in terms of raids. And if you look at the general consensus of Resto Druids in terms of talent changes, you got Harder Wild, which is like a 5-minute cooldown, which is going to buff your affinity. Now, which affinity you're going to choose? If you choose Balance Affinity, you get Typhoon. So Typhoon is no longer a talent. Well, it is a talent, but it comes with Balance Affinity, and with Feral Affinity you get a main, which is basically a combo point stone. So it might influence which affinity you're going to choose based on the utility spells that you get, but if you pick one of those affinities and if you use Heart of the Wild, your damage is going to be insanely strong for around 45 seconds every 5 minutes. And there's also very strong legendaries for Resto Druid that can really buff that as well, and the healing. So all of a sudden that's literally like one of the main changes. Outside of that, you also have things like Swift Med now requires a hot to activate on a person. So you need to have a Rejuve, a Wild Growth, or Regrowth hot on a person when you need to cast Swift Med on them. And honestly, that's probably the biggest change that I've seen, because sometimes a person is like 10% HP and you really want to apply Swift Med on them, and like, okay, that person only had Life Bloom on them and Life Bloom does not activate Swift Med, and okay, the person is dead type of deal. But you do get used to it, just like the Holy Power. Or when you play Holy Paladin and you can't cast Light of Dawn because you need Holy Power, you will get used to it after a couple of gameplays and a couple of dungeons, things like that. So that's a Swiftman change. Then you also have Ironbark. Cooldown has been increased, and basically the Stonebark talent has been baked into Ironbark. Again, the Ironbark increase probably will be felt in really high-end keys where you really need that defensive, but I don't feel this to be all that bad. Or like, oh my god, Resto Druids are not viable anymore because Ironbark is a bit longer. That's not gonna happen. I still feel it's not that bad of a change. And you got a couple of talents, things like Nourish is back, which I don't feel is going to be, well, again, we'll see. Do you need 2 spot healing abilities with Nourish and Regrowth? I don't know. And you also got Overgrowth talent, which cost a little bit too much at the moment in the beta. So if we do a very quick summary of all the healers right now, if you look at the video, Holy Paladin just got the most changes. It basically received a small rework of everything. You still have Glimmer, but as a talent, you have Holy Power, you have your auras, Infusion of Light is changed completely. You do have some really cool legendaries that are getting nerfed, but we'll see if there's going to be a gameplay with Divine Toll. And outside of that, you also see if you enjoy Holy or if you enjoy Priest DPS, Holy Priest changes, the amount of DPS abilities that they received. They also got Power Word Shield, I forgot to mention if you really care about that. So there is a lot of, if you look at Holy Priest, you got kind of like, okay, Holy Priest got a lot of things from Discipline and Shadow, but like I mentioned before, Discipline Priest doesn't have to make the choice of healing or DPSing, they can do both at the same time. So at the back of my mind, I'm not sure which is still going to be the meta, we'll see later on. Of course, there's still a lot of time. Outside of that, outside of those 2 healers, honestly, every other healer falls into this whole few talent changes, and that's it. Like Resto Shaman, Earth Shield is probably the most interesting thing that happened to me. Mistweaver Monk, Wave the Crane, has it been buffed, has it been nerfed because of the Spinning Crane kick cap? You have to remember, if you look at the AoE caps for healers right now, Holy Paladin Consecration has no AoE cap. There's no AoE cap whatsoever. For Priest, Mindseer doesn't have a cap either. You also have your Holy Nova, which doesn't have a cap as well, but I'm not sure if that's going to be really used. You have to remember that dots don't have caps, so you can apply your Shadow Wall Pain on any mobs as you want. So that's a big increase, because look at Resto Druids, they still have Sunfire. Sunfire can be spread across all the members as a dot. And also, Resto Druid Swipe doesn't have a cap, even though Feral Swipe does. So I'm not sure if that's an issue or not, or if it's a bug. Right now, as I'm making this video, Resto Druids can go into kitty form and swipe for as many targets as they're close by, and Feral can swipe only to a specific number. Keep that in mind. And then you also have to look at Resto Shamans. Resto Shamans in BFA were living the life of Shadowlands. They were always capped. You have a cooldown on Flame Shock, which means you can only apply it on a certain number of targets, and your Chain Lightning was always capped anyways. So the one healer that actually got an AoE cap was a Mistweaver Monk with Spinning Crane Kick, and I feel like Blizzard is directly trying to impact their MDI performance with this change. So that's probably the biggest thing that happened to them. And then if you look, like I mentioned, with Druids, nothing really changed with them. A couple of things got taken away in form of being baked into like balance affinity talent like Typhoon. But all of a sudden you get Cyclone, you get Stampeding Roar, you get some juicy legendaries. So just as a bonus to this video, because it's about to end, if I were to predict very early predictions, this video is not about predictions for the best healers, but looking at some of these changes in Mythic Plus content, I just don't see how Resto Druid is not going to be great. Like the amount of utility that they provide right now, Resto Druid in beta is probably, in terms of HPS, they're doing really well, and they didn't have conduits for a really long time. So they were performing really well in terms of HPS, and the utility is still there. I just don't see how they're going to be bad in Mythic Plus. But in raids we'll have to see. So that's the only real prediction I'm going to do. My favorite healer right now in terms of the changes, I didn't really like a whole lot of fiddling around with Holy Paladin. I think Holy Paladin is in a decent spot, but it needs to receive some new generators in my eyes. You need some new Holy Power generators and maybe a new Holy Power damage spender to make it feel a little bit less clunky, in my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion. I did like Holy Priest receiving a whole lot of damaging abilities because I like healer DPS. So I would consider Holy Priest change to be very positive. I feel Resto Shaman's Earth Shield was good. Maybe they need a bit more single target or a tank cooldown that's more meaningful than Spirit Link. Again, we'll have to see about this. Resto Druid didn't need no changes, and they got basically very few changes. I think Resto Druid Mythic Plus gameplay is one of the best healer playstyle in the game right now, so I'm kind of happy they didn't really change it. In raids, I think they do need certain utility to really make a comeback, but we'll see. In terms of Mistweavers, honestly, I have no idea. I did not get to test out Fist Weaving build for Mistweavers, which is very interesting because there is a Fist Weaving legendary, there is a Night Fake Covenant ability, could be very interesting, but again, the Kyrian ability is a bit overpowered in terms of HPS, but I really wanted to try out Fist Weaving build for Mistweavers. I didn't get to because a lot of things were just outright broken, they didn't work at all. So I do want Mistweaver Fist Weaving build to come back because I'm very bored of the whole Essence font upwelling build that Mistweavers were kind of playing for the whole of BFA, but that's my opinion only. And in terms of Discipline Priest, honestly, I really enjoyed Discipline Priest, and I'm happy to see that they didn't get a whole lot of changes. Shadow Covenant became a bit better, which is very cool. And I think Discipline Priest or Priest legendaries in general are pretty interesting in terms of how they affect your playstyle. I do apologize for making this video really long. I didn't cover every single healer change because I wanted to cover the ones that I feel will be meaningful in terms of changing your gameplay. And I will be doing more videos about my favorite healer covenants, about my healer predictions when we get close to Shadowlands. So check those out. Let me know how you feel about the healers. Which healer are you thinking of maining in Shadowlands? And which healer changes do you feel are the best in terms of providing a meaningful gameplay? Let me know, guys, and I'll see you in my next guide.